are the cause of great misery.
That stretches the sanity of the mind.
Not bad for a non-bossing build. All right. Deathless Maven.
Hello, friends. It is my absolute pleasure to present to you the culmination of the past 3 weeks of work on this build. It all started from the germ of an idea that didn't quite pan out, but through constant experimentation and persistence, I've ended up with something that is uniquely my own and is especially suited to my playstyle while complementing my other primary character of this league. What I'm showing here is not intended to be a build guide to just copy and play, but instead to be a showcase and a diary of my process of creating this build that will hopefully inspire you to make something of your own. I believe the design space for builds in Path of Exile, even with the recent nerfs, is still rich and vibrant if you should choose to engage with its complexities. The end result of my experimentation is a Cyclone cast on crit Arc Raider with a huge amount of speed and clear that has design echoes from years past and enough damage to take on all standard boss fights. It can clear maps almost as quickly as a meta bow build and actually has a moderate amount of defense to combat the more melee-oriented playstyle. Now, all journeys have a beginning, and the humble origins of this build could not be further from where we are now. Let's go back in time to 3 weeks ago when a younger me thought Voltaxic Burst might have some potential. Hello. So, where do we start? But from the beginning. So this all started from me going for a walk and thinking about the new skills and wanting to make a build around them. And I immediately thought of Voltaxic Burst. It has some really cool ideas. You know, the built-in Explodey obviously appealed to me. And it's a lightning and chaos sounds really, really cool. How can we make that work? Now, the way that Voltaxic Burst works, if you're not familiar, is you cast the spell, and then it has a cooldown that then will, after the cooldown finishes, it will explode. It does base lightning damage with a 40% conversion to chaos damage, and the built-in Explodey is it deals base lightning damage equal to 6% of the corpse's maximum life. So obviously we can get some really, really cool Explodey stuff going on if we scale everything properly. So this was really appealing to me. And obviously, the annoying thing is it kind of has that Blade Vortex slash Winter Orb playstyle that I honestly don't really like, where you're going to stop, and then you're going to cast something, and then you're going to walk for a little bit. You're going to stop, you're going to cast, and then you're going to walk for a little bit. And this is basically the intended playstyle of Voltaxic Burst. And you know what? If you really don't mind the stop and start, the base numbers of this skill are pretty good, and you could probably just make it work. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to try to come up with something a little hipster and a little creative. So what I did is cast while channeling, charge dash with Voltaxic Burst. Now what I can do is it will charge up the charge burst as I'm channeling, and then when I let go, when I get to my my target location, it will explode. And it can even explode where I'm standing, so I can kind of even be charging up and already be doing damage from where I am charging it up. And if I get the right cadence going, ideally I can get over there and then, charged up, go, and then explode a little bit, charge up, let it go, and run a little bit, get a couple explodies. And unfortunately, even with as much duration as possible, I had a level 5 awakened cast while channeling. I had all of the reduced duration that you could get here in the tree. There isn't that much room for reduced duration in the first place. Awakened cast while channeling caps out at being able to cast the spell every 0.3 seconds, which isn't really fast enough to start scaling some really impressive damage. So that was just in the garbage. So not wanting to immediately scuff the whole thing, do something standard and give up, I tried something else. I was watching Pelstrin's stream one day, and he was starting to put together his Ignite Bulldozer Elementalist build, and I was very inspired by watching him shield charge around and kill everything on the entire screen. And I was working through this build at the time, and I was wondering, could I maybe do something with Whirling Blades and cast on crit and maybe use that to trigger Voltaxic Burst? So I put that together, and this is basically what it looked like. So the idea is that, can I just Whirling Blades around, and if I have enough crit chance, I'll be triggering a Voltaxic Burst all the time, and then scale that Voltaxic Burst. I'll get some really nice explodies, and I can just Whirling Blades around. So this was the basic idea for what I would want it to look like. As you can see, it's it's triggering. We're queuing up maybe 2, 3 at a time, absolute best case. The problem is with the decreased duration, it's just best case, we're getting an explodey, it's every 2 seconds, right? It's not enough to really clear the screen and not really feel good. And it was at this point that I was also wondering about the lightning to chaos scaling and looking at the different avenues that we have for conversion there. Basically, it looked like you're just split down the middle, and you're going to be scaling your lightning as high as possible, either ignoring lightning or chaos resistance and just doing one or the other, kind of giving up on the other damage type, or splitting yourself down the middle for this real weird build setup that just doesn't feel particularly good. And I didn't want to use a Voltaxic Rift when it kind of went against the entire purpose of my build. So since I was doing lightning and cast on crit and trying to think about what I could do from there, I just looked at every single lightning skill. I actually bought every single non-channeling lightning skill. So I tried Storm Call, Storm Burst, Arc, Crackling Lance, everything that I could put in there, Ball Lightning, and I tried them all out. And in fact, doing this, Shock Nova kind of felt the best. And it looks something like this. So when you have a high enough crit chance, Shock Nova actually does pretty good damage. And I was just Whirling Bladesing around, and it felt pretty good. I was basically blowing up every single pack that I was going into. And in fact, so what I'm doing here in Blood Aqueducts is exactly what I was doing. If you can't make a build feel good in Blood Aqueducts, well, it's probably just not going to feel good, right? No matter what. So I use this as kind of my prototyping sandbox location, and I thought, hey, that feels pretty good. Shock Nova's pretty good. Let's go from there. Well, if you've ever played a cast on crit build and you've tried to do cast on crit, not as Cyclone, you already know exactly where this is going. Cast on crit with anything but Cyclone, you can kind of do something with Flicker, is just not really going to feel that good. The main problem is, unless you are absolutely scaling your attack speed like crazy and you're using something that allows you to be stationary, the big problem with Whirling Blades is it is a movement skill, and you have to go back and forth to even try to go really quick. So you have this, for single target, you have this real weird situation where you're just going like left and right constantly. And best case, right? Like you're only going to be getting like 3, 4, maybe 5 attacks per second at your absolute peak. And that's just not enough to scale the damage, unfortunately. And that's when I just gave up a little bit. And I said, okay, well, there's only one answer. We're doing cast on crit. We're doing Shock Nova. And let's just put Cyclone in. So with Cyclone in, cast on crit Shock Nova, looks a little something like this. And it's pretty cool. I'm actually a little sad that this didn't work out. The main problem is it just has this small little AoE for the clear, and the single target damage did kind of struggle a little bit. On paper, without too much scaling, Shock Nova actually had the second highest damage. Stormcall had the highest, but Stormcall had all sorts of other issues with timing and all that. It kind of almost had the Voltaxic Burst issue with, you know, having the call happen and then the storm happens. It should be call and wait for storm. You know, it had its own issues. And so I played like this for a little while, actually. I got up to red maps. I got to like late red maps, actually. This was basically my build. And it felt okay. I had a Stormcall helmet, and I didn't mind it. The damage is okay. Unfortunately, I didn't love the clear. And so I went a little bit back to the drawing board, and I looked at what was available. Like, so I looked at Crackling Lance again, and then obviously Arc. And as you know, I ended up with Arc. The very cool thing about Arc is it chains 8 times at level 20 by default. And if you can get it up to level 26, and if you have a helmet with +1 Arc here, you can get your Arc to chain 10 times. And the very nice thing about Arc is it gets a single 15% more damage multiplier per each remaining chain for single target. So that is a 150% more damage multiplier if we can get the level of Arc high enough and get that helmet enchant for 10 arcs. That is pretty good, and it pushes Arc's damage up to the point where it becomes significant and good enough to do everything in the game, such to the point where this build with everything combined is roughly 8 million Cirrus DPS, which is higher than I was even shooting for the purposes of this build. And then to show a little bit more of what it looks like with an explanation, here is a tier 14 Toxic Sewer. And this is basically like the ideal map to show this build off in, because we're going in straight lines down corridors. The chain really gets to take advantage of all the mobs being packed together. And since we are doing a 48% conversion to cold damage, and we're also using Blast Freeze with Herald of Ice, we get really, really nice shatter propagations here. And as you can see, the single target is pretty clean. It's good enough for all map, like way beyond what is necessary for map bossing. It can do things like Legion. It can do things. I've done 60% T16 Delirious maps, killing Omniphobia and Kosis very, very comfortably in those maps. You know, it's not here to do anything crazy like really hard fears or anything, but I've done Cortex. I've done some of the other invitations like Formed and Twisted very, very comfortably, and it just feels really, really good. Now, there were actually at least a half a dozen more things in there that I skipped, but those were kind of like the big milestones for things that I tried. When I chose to go for Call of Brotherhood, that came a little bit later. When I actually tried things like Discharge, I really tried a whole bunch of things across the board, but I wanted to show you guys like the big milestones of things that I jumped between that kind of show the logical progression of how I ended up where I did. So why is this build so special to me? It's really about jumping into the sandbox from the conception of an idea at the beginning and having the persistence to just sit there and experiment and keep trying things. And the really, really cool thing about this is, especially as a community, we did this all on stream with people chipping in ideas and bouncing things off of each other. Most of it off me, most of it with me off stream, kind of pulling my hair, but definitely had a lot of help with bouncing ideas off of people on stream. We handcrafted every single item that we have here, like specifically tuned to make this build work. My analogy that I always made when people ask like, oh, do you have a POV for this build? Was it is currently like a kit car like prototype where I just ordered a bunch of like boutique pieces from all over the world. And I'm in here in my garage, like kind of tuning things together and like really, really making sure that like, okay, I need this like specific carburetor from a 1984 Ferrari to like, you know, fit with this like twin turbo from a 2002 Audi S8 or something, right? Like really crazy, weird boutique stuff that I'm all just like jury rigging together. And in the end, like we got the numbers just like perfectly tuned and humming and making it feel really, really nice. And that's just what makes it so special to me. How does it work? Well, if you've ever played a cast on crit build, we're using Cyclone to attack many, many times a second. And unfortunately, if you're doing cast on crit, Cyclone is the way. You really can't use anything except for Cyclone because we want to attack about 10 times a second. And you basically can't do that with any other attack in the game, sadly. And since Cyclone is a movement skill and a channeling skill, we can take advantage of a lot of other facets of the game and mechanics due to that. Cyclone is the trigger skill for cast and crit. It is what it is. What we're doing is we're attacking roughly 10 times a second with Cyclone. We have cast on critical strike support, which is then triggering Arc. Arc is a lightning skill that with all of the gem levels and everything that we have, it will chain 10 times total. Chain and just constantly hit everything on the screen, basically. In addition to that, we're using a Call of the Brotherhood, which converts 48% of that lightning damage to cold damage. And then we also have a 100% chance to shock against frozen enemies, and we're scaling both our cold and our lightning damage as much as possible. By actually being hybrid damage, you can see here that we are roughly 60% cold and 40% lightning damage at this point. Even though we're converting 48%, we're scaling our cold damage a little bit more than our lightning damage. But because we're hybrid, we're actually able to take advantage of a lot of really interesting mechanics in the game, such as things like Storm Rider, where we get power charges when you shock a chilled enemy, cold damage with hits against shocked enemies, and lightning damage with hits against chilled enemies. Since we're always doing both, we always get the benefit of both of those. And so I stack Storm Rider multiple times. Since we're doing cold damage, I can use Blast Freeze, which says freezes you inflict spread to other enemies within a radius of 12. That's what gives us that really, really clean propagation of our shatters from the Herald device. And then we can do things like get Snowstorm, gain lightning damage as extra cold damage against chilled enemies, as well as Sadist, which gives us just straight up 40% increased damage because we both chill and shock enemies constantly. In addition to that, we could make really, really interesting items that kind of don't really fit into other builds. Since we don't care if our damage is lightning or cold, we can roll these really, really interesting rings like this one that gives us both flat lightning damage to spells and attacks and flat cold damage against chilled or frozen enemies. And since we're just straight up 50-50 down the line, kind of, both of those scale kind of even across the board for us. Although flat lightning damage is better because we are scaling primarily lightning damage initially that is then converted to cold damage. All right, that's about as far as I can go without just naming all the gems that I have equipped. So let's start going over the gems and why I'm using them and what they do. So as I already showed, what we have in our body armor is Cyclone with cast on crit tied to Arc, increased critical damage support. I actually did use increased critical strikes until I got my critical strike chance to, I'm actually well over 100% for both attack and spell. And then I swapped that with increased critical damage, gives us a gigantic critical strike multiplier. And then Anomalous Inspiration, which gives us even more critical strike chance. And Awakened Added Lightning Damage support. We use the Awakened Added Lightning Damage support primarily for that +1 level of supported skill lightning gems because we need to get Arc to 26 specifically for that +1 chain. However, it is just really, really good anyway. It's a gigantic boost of flat lightning damage. We want to scale our lightning damage initially and then have it convert over to cold anyway. We're totally happy doing that. So that's our main skill setup here in terms of our auras. Now, I guess I should have started off with this initially. This build is not a budget build. This build is, I want to go in my garage. Okay, I retired. I had a successful job as a hedge fund manager. I retired to my garage and I just have all of these boutique Ferrari and Lamborghini parts. I want to play around with them and tinker and see what I can make. And that's what this is. But I want to make this video for you guys to really show what can be done with some creativity and persistence and just really fine-tuning the numbers and understanding how the game works. So, because you're going to see in a second why I'm saying that. So I have a Divergent Wrath, which has a little bit reduced reservation. And then I have Zealotry, which is then tied to a level 4 Enlighten. Unfortunately, level 4 Enlightens are not very cheap this league. And then we have both of those in a shield that says Socketed Gems have 15% reduced reservation. So we are reducing that reservation as much as possible. We want these things to do almost nothing. And in fact, if we take a look, Wrath is only reserving 25% and Zealotry is 26.4%. By default, they each reserve 50%. So we're just cutting that right in half. So those are our primary auras up there, and then our additional auras. And this is why in the intro, I said it has echoes of some builds of the past. One of my favorite builds, my first very strong build back in the day, was triple Herald Blade Vortex on an Elementalist, the old Elementalist with the Mastermind of Discord and the Pendulum and all that type of stuff. And I kind of wanted to go back to that a little bit. And the cool thing about being a hybrid cold and lightning damage is it greatly benefits us to run both Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. These just give us tons of additional flat damage that go into our more multipliers. The way that we do this is we use Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, as well as Awaken added lightning damage and as many levels in Arc as possible to really just get as much flat damage as possible. We don't really get flat damage anywhere else. Well, we get a lot from our ring and a little bit more from our shield, but the rest of that is just from the heralds and our gem levels. Everything else is just increased damage, more damage, increased damage, more damage. So we want to get that flat damage as high as possible. And so one of the best sources of that is just getting in Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. And because we have +2 level socketed AoE gems in our helmet, our Herald of Thunder is actually level 27 and our Herald of Ice is level 24. And this pushes the flat lightning damage that we're getting from these as high as we possibly can get it. And then we have another level 4 Enlighten support here. And then we have just a level 1 Precision here that unfortunately is boosted up to level 4. I would ideally keep that at level 1, but it has to be in this helmet. We can't move it anywhere else. And all of that leaves us with 129 mana. All right, so next up, if you've played any traditional Cost Breeze cast on crit, it is a Vortex setup with Divergent Bone Chill. What this says is enemies in chilling areas from supported skills take increased cold damage by increased by chill effect. So that just means monsters that are standing in the Vortex chill effect, they just take increased cold damage. It is actually not the biggest damage boost for us since we are only 60% cold. If there was another thing that I could put in there that says monsters just take increased damage overall, I would do it, but it's the best that we can do. The main thing that I use it for is for Hex Touch and Elemental Weakness. This just lets me apply the Elemental Weakness, and I can very easily hold down both Q and W here, and I can just Cyclone and Vortex all the time. In my gloves, I have Flame Dash with Arcane Surge, and then Steel Skin and Blood Rage. Blood Rage is what gets us a little bit more attack speed. That's really all it's for. Doesn't really do anything else for us. And then Flame Dash with Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge is just really good for mana regen and another more damage multiplier. And Steel Skin is best in slot for casters, really, for staying alive. Unfortunately, my Steel Skin is only level 11 like this. I don't have enough strength to level it up anymore. I got my little wimpy noodle ranger arms. But it's enough to really take the edge off a little bit. 568 damage is a nice boost. That is just pretty good that you get every few seconds. And then lastly, in my weapon, I was originally using Trigger in the suffix here. I instead crafted Intelligence just so I could move some stats around. I may find Intelligence in another place and craft Trigger back on here. The main thing is that I wanted to find the 4-second trigger from June, but crafting that suffix perfectly was really, really hard. And when I hit the T1 crit multi when I was crafting this, I just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to craft something besides Trigger, and I'm just going to manually cast Hydrosphere. So I could craft the Trigger, and you'd see like having your Hydrosphere come with you every 8 seconds. It's just infrequent enough where I basically can't rely on it. So I would rather just manually cast it when I need it on like a big boss or a big pack or something. And it's okay. Ideally, I would have it on the 4-second trigger, but I'm okay with this. I have it linked with Culling Strike support. Every pulse from the Hydrosphere is an attack, and so the Culling Strike can trigger from the Hydrosphere. Really, really nice to just get free cull somewhere else. I don't have to worry about trying to craft something crazy on my gloves. And then I just tossed in my Ice Golem right here. He's not alive all the time. He's just there once in a while. It's really, really nice when I'm kind of mapping. I don't have my power charges up. It just ensures that that first pack that I hit, I'm still getting really good crit strike and accuracy. And after that first pack, I have my power charges up anyway, and I don't need them anymore. Hydrosphere is actually really, really good for our build because it pulses and it works with chain. We actually get a lot of benefit from Hydrosphere, and it itself is doing about 300,000 damage per second with the chains from Arc. So this is actually a really nice boost of damage from us, and it obviously applies a lot of the elemental ailments as well for us. So it's as everyone knows, Hydrosphere is super, super broken. And since we are hybrid cold and lightning damage, Hydrosphere applies cold and lightning exposure perfectly for us. So it's pretty wild. It does pretty solid damage, not even linked to anything else. And it's great. It's honestly really, really good. All right, so that was all the gems. Now it's time for gear. This is the fun part. But this is also where, if you saw the video series from last week where I had to farm 100 exalts just to craft my weapon, you have an idea of what went into this build. You know, the actual currency that I put into this build, honestly, it's in the many hundreds of exalts. However, the actual value of the gear in the end is probably half of that. I crafted a lot of gear, or I tried to craft a lot of gear that I ended up just rolling over or even giving up on. So for example, the 100 exalts that I farmed that week for that mini series, I threw it at this ring trying to craft something. I tried to woke together Frostbite and Assassin's Mark. I was just really sleepy in the morning. I forgot to check the mod groups and that they were in the same mod group and you can woke them together. I threw away 3 Awakener's Orbs, 3 Awakener's Orbs, and just, you know, there was, you know, 10 exalts, right? Of just like rolling the bases and throwing them together. And I ended up spending over 100 exalts trying to craft this ring. And this is what I ended up with. I'm actually really happy with where it is, but it's not even, and that entire 1 week of that mini series went into just trying to make this ring. And it's not even the ring that I ended up using. We worked with a viewer who actually crafted this one instead. Gives us much more sustain, and with Assassin's Mark instead of Frostbite, this is actually really, really nice. Anyway, that's my long disclaimer for showing you what my gear is. So let's start off with possibly the simplest of the item. This is a helmet with elevated reduced reservation of skills and elevated shaping. Nearby enemies take increased elemental damage. Since we are 50-50-ish hybrid lightning and cold damage, we actually can't really focus on nearby enemies have -9 cold res or nearby enemies have -9 or -12 lightning res. Now, on this base, I could have also had -9 cold res on the suffix, which would have been really cool, but we ended up with accuracy rating. So we focus on the base increased elemental damage taken. This is actually really, really nice. I just woke together, you know, I had to elevate those 2 bases. I woke it together, and then I did suffixes cannot be changed, reforge life, and I actually ended up with that cold damage to spells as well, which is pretty cool. And then I did suffixes cannot be changed, Ashling Slam, got the +2 level of socketed AoE, and I'm happy with that. As I showed before, we use this because we want to scale our RMR as much as possible so we can reserve a crazy amount of auras, and we want to get the +2 level socketed AoE gems so our heralds get as high as possible. The shield was crafted very, very easily, just using critical strike chance essences and throwing them at it until I hit the socketed gems have 15% reduced reservation. That was it. So it took a fair amount of essences, but not more than a couple exalts worth. This was actually probably my cheapest item that I have. Then I did suffixes cannot be changed. I think I did reforged lightning because I wanted lightning res on the suffix. Then suffixes cannot be changed again, and veiled chaos orb. Then I just got the lightning and cold damage prefix, crafted life, good to go. The body armor, so I woke together. So the body armor is actually really, really cool. So an interesting thing about this build and an interesting challenge by playing a Raider with cast on crit is getting that base critical strike chance up, especially with the nerf to Bottled Faith and not getting that +2 base crit there. And since we're not using Hatred, so we can't take advantage of that Hatred % crit base, we have to like really, really focus on getting crit in a lot of places. And to me, I think that was an interesting challenge. What I did is I took a Hunter base and I threw fossils at it. I think just jagged fossils until I had tier 1 attack and spell crit. This is the really cool thing about this craft. And what that guarantees is when I use a Maven Orb, whichever one gets elevated, I'm happy, right? If I elevate attack crit, then what I do is I just make a Shaper base that I have to elevate the spell crit on. If I elevate the spell crit, I get an Elder base, which is what happened. Then I just elevate attack crit on the other one. And then that's the one that I have to 50-50. But on this one, that first Maven Orb is a guaranteed 100% chance of success. And that's a way that you can just, if you're like really clever about your build, your crafting, you can actually set it up so that not everything is just RNG. You can like be clever about how you put your build together. So I did that. I elevated the spell crit. Then I elevated attack crit on the Elder base. I woke them together. I got extremely lucky. And I also hit T1 fire res on the suffix. Then I did suffixes cannot be changed. Reforged caster to guarantee the additional curse. Suffixes cannot be changed. Ashling slam and got the increased life, craft life, and done. This is a very, very standard cast on crit body armor. Very, very happy and proud of this build, of this craft. All right, next up is the amulet. As I said before, we really need to focus on getting the level of arc to 26. To do that, we need to get +1/+1 on our amulet. Very similar to how I did the Bane amulet is I bought an amulet that had +1 lightning and +1 intelligence and another garbage prefix. I think I bought this for 3 to 4 exalts. And I just YOLO annulled it, got very lucky, and I didn't hit the plus to level of gems. If I did, I could sell it. I could still sell it with that base for a round 1 exalt. +1 level of all intelligence skill gems is still worth like an exalt to sell. So it's not a huge risk. And by being able to take that risk, you can actually end up crafting an item for much, much cheaper than it would normally take. Then I just did prefixes cannot be changed, Ashling Slam until I hit a prefix. Then I got the life and mana regen, which is actually perfect. That's exactly what I want because, as I said, dealing with mana is a little tricky with cast on crit these days. Prefixes cannot be changed, reforged crit until I got critical strike chance. And I think the fire res just came with that. So I'm very, very happy with this craft. Simple. And then we allocate sovereignty because, as always, we try to get as much RMR as possible because we have a ton of auras and we need as much reserve mana as possible. The gloves are pretty simple craft. We had to elevate Unnerve on Hunter gloves and we had to hit Frenzy Charge on Warlord gloves. Just bought that for a couple of chaos. I think you can buy just Frenzy Charge Warlord gloves for not that much. And then we woke them together. We actually ended up with a very garbage prefix. So what I did is cleaned off all the suffixes and I bought off of TFT a non-influence to influence. We got incredibly lucky and hit tier 2 increased spell damage on the prefix. I didn't even know what I was going to end up with. I just wanted to end up with an open prefix and craft life, but I'm happy with this. Then we just kept doing prefixes cannot be changed, veiled chaos orb until we got something good. As you can see, we got a lot of chaos res on these gloves, which almost single-handedly is what puts us at 31 chaos res, which to me is a very comfortable place to be. The boots are Crusader and Hunter boots that have elevated tailwind and regular T1 increased cooldown recovery rate. I woke them together. I got cold res, tier 7 cold res, and then I did suffixes cannot be changed. I did reforged speed. I hit tier 1 movement speed. I'm done. I'm good enough. If I really, really wanted to, I could go for an Ashling movement speed, but I'm happy with this. And in fact, the flat mana really does help us. Craft life on top of that, good to go. And then the cousin craft to that is this belt. I actually woke together Warlord T1 all elemental resistance. Kind of a funny choice, but I wanted to guarantee that my belt had a lot of res. I woke that together with increased cooldown recovery rate from Crusader and ended up with tier 5 cold res on the suffix. Suffixes cannot be changed, reforged life. Actually ended up with increased lightning damage as well on the prefix. crafted increased damage. Pretty nice belt. And then the ring, do whatever you need to do to make the prefixes. You can just do Reforged Casters, Reforged Lightning. You could throw it into Reforged Colds until you get prefixes that you care about. Really, really cool prefixes. A viewer, actually, Jerry Pie, he crafted this one for us. We were kind of talking with him for supplementary rings. We also have this one, which has a bunch of resistance and life gain on hit. And then this is the one that I crafted, the diamond ring that has all sorts of crazy stuff on it. There's a lot of different options. This is actually kind of a flexible slot. This one I am actually the happiest with because it gives us Assassin's Mark and it gives us mana gained on hit, so mana is not remotely an issue for longer boss fights. Now, the life gain on hit is really, really nice for sustaining ourselves while mapping and not dying, but the mana gained on hit is just really, really good for boss fighting. I have a Call of Brotherhood. I think I bought this for 8x. Double Corrupted Call of Brotherhood that has Wrath 20% increased aura effect and plus 16 to all resistances. Very, very nice Call of Brotherhood for our build. As I said before, what this does is it converts 48% of our lightning damage to cold. We get 100% shock chance against frozen enemies and an additional 30% increased lightning damage. Just really, really nice across the board. And it's what enables, it's kind of like the linchpin of this build and like why it works. And then the big boy, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very specific dagger. So this very, very specific dagger. So I wanted a rune dagger. So I originally was crafting a sword, and swords don't really have all the stuff exactly that I was looking for. And so a viewer recommended, hey, why don't you look into rune daggers? And I took a look and I didn't know exactly what I wanted. The problem is, and this is kind of like the weird thing with Cast on Crit, if you've never played it, is you need a very, very specific attack rate. And I wasn't sure with a dagger this slow that I was able to get the attack rate that I wanted. So it was really interesting, like looking around what was available on the trade website and looking at like how I could scale my attack speed in other ways and move things around. And this is what I ended up buying. I think the person had it listed for 60x for a number of days. Now that I think about it, I think we got it down to like maybe 32x haggling, a little bit of that Tujin practice. And we got the base, and I actually think that was a totally fair price. I don't think anyone ever would have paid 60x for this. And then we used spell damage essences until we hit lightning spell skill gems as well on the prefix. So this is the crazy craft, right? I think the estimated price was going to be 40 exalts of essences to hit the lightning spell skill gems. We hit it in like 1 or 2x. Like incredibly. Like it blew my mind when that hit. And then prefixes cannot be changed, Reforge crit, and then prefixes cannot be changed, and Ashling Slam get the double damage, and then crafted the intelligence there. Really, really cool craft, really specific, weird thing. And the 1% attack speed per 8% quality is very, very specific. We are at 9.99 attacks per second. Our max is 10.1 for the cooldown recovery rate of the cast on crit. So we're right at that limit of exactly what we're looking for. It's like basically perfect. And that's by like specifically using this craft and having exactly 30, not more and not any more quality. Like if I crafted more quality, I would actually gain too much attack speed. I would actually go over the cast on crit breakpoint. So it's like we are like right on that edge. So I actually can't craft quality on this thing, which is kind of funny. This is a very specific, weird build with weird boutique items that you're not going to find in demand anywhere else. They're specifically for this build. I'm crafting just for myself, but it's really cool how they all just come together and like form this really cohesive system that feels good. Also, for this build, it is a level 100 build. I played it for a while at 94, but I basically went straight from 94 to 100 to finish the build. This is one of those builds where every single passive point is absolutely critical, and I would give up a lot just to get a couple more passive points. It is very, very specific, like how I'm missing basics of pain here just to go through pressure points, just because I have like that exact fine-tuned amount of critical strike chance. And like, that's what I like about like a really, really, nicely tuned build. If you've seen a cast on crit build before, or you've seen a critical strike frenzy charge stacking raider before, this will look very, very familiar to you. And in fact, if you saw my Ellie hit build last league, it'll look very, very familiar to you. Like this is kind of, it's something, it's in my wheelhouse. I'm very comfortable with it. And I adapted that build to this and use some of those scaling techniques to make this build work. So in terms of my passive tree, I'm going to go with my regular controversial, my controversial statement. I only play Raider for Avatar of the Chase. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but the main reason why I play Raider, why Raider is my favorite ascendancy in the game, is Avatar of the Chase. If I don't take Avatar of the Chase, I don't play Raider. I've tried playing without it. My original concept actually I tried I tried Way of the Poacher, Rapid Assault, and going all the way to Avatar of the Veil. The benefit of doubling your onslaught effect is just too good. I dropped Avatar of the Veil. I said, screw it, I can live without it. And I took Avatar of the Chase. It is, in my opinion, that is the source of the fun. It might not be like the objective, this mitigates the best, this is overall the best, but it is the most fun node in the game. To me, it's the most fun passive node in the game for ascendancies. Quartz Infusion, phasing is like godlike if you're playing any melee-ish build, and then 15% dodge, both attack and spell, is one of the strongest defensive nodes in the game. And then Way of the Poacher, we just get frenzy charges. We care about frenzy charges a lot. We stack our frenzy charges. We are a frenzy charge stacking build. We have 8 frenzy charges. That is very, very important to the way that this build works. So, that's part of it. Avatar of the Chase, so we run around like we are in our hideout, right? And if we, just look 104% movement speed, just walking around natty, and then I pop my Quartz Flask, 168% movement speed, right? Like, to me, this is what makes the game fun, is when it's really, really fluid and I can move around, and especially when I get my frenzy charges up, like I can cast Flame Dash. Even like the non-instant Flame Dash feels like it's instant. The game is very responsive. Everything does what I want. This is the way the game should feel. I love it. This is what I want. Please, Chris, don't take it away from me. With all that said, you could make a very strong argument for Avatar of the Veil. You would have to find another source of frenzy charges or drop the frenzy charge stacking entirely and find other ways to scale attack speed. You could make a totally fine, very strong argument for dropping frenzy charges and grabbing Avatar of the Veil. With that said, Hydrosphere, it's not as strong as Avatar of the Veil exposure. However, it gives us really, really nice damage. We can get call with it. It does great stuff with the chaining and the drenching and everything. There's just no big reason for Avatar of the Veil for me, and especially with like really, really strong flask mods that can react to really annoying things. I don't really feel the need to do things like grab Crystal Skin or Avatar of the Veil or other elemental avoidance. I'm totally happy with kind of building around it using flasks and some other resources. Other than that, a lot of this is very, very standard. Just going up, getting the critical strike stuff up here, getting all the frenzy charge stuff that we can, getting accuracy and critical strike chance right here, getting life, getting mana sustain from Essence Sap is actually really, really nice here. We do have some elemental avoidance. We have Wind Dancer. Our large cluster jewels, we can kind of mix and match and do whatever we want. Things like Sadist and Snowstorm are crazy, crazy strong for our build since we leverage both cold and lightning and all of the benefits that come with it. These nodes actually become very, very strong. And then for our medium ones, a single quick getaway anymore, and we'd be attacking too quickly. A single quick getaway and pressure points. A Storm Rider here, Blast Freeze. You can get Blast Freeze on a medium cluster jewel. I was originally using it here, but I could actually unspec that, save a node, grab it on this medium one here. Blast Freeze gives us really good propagation and shatters and clearing the whole screen. Doriani's Lesson for a little bit of additional leech and a little bit additional damage. Pressure points, and then stacking crit chance, crit multi, all that type of stuff as much as possible. Where possible, my long-term goal is to get a chance to avoid being stunned implicit on jewels. That's just a pipe dream. I've been trying to stack that ever since Harvest League, but I just keep buying new jewels and not hitting 100% chance, but that is the dream. We do have 28% chance by going up to Heart of Oak. In addition to that, I do take Soul of the Brine King with stun and block recovery, and I'm using Soul of Yugal because reduced effective curses on me and reduced reflect just in case. And then a Conqueror's Efficiency, if you can get one with Corrupted Blood. We made this one. This allows us to have a lot more flexibility and just get whatever stats we need in all of our other jewels very, very comfortably. And then kind of our very, very special pride and joy here, this Watcher's Eye. Pretty crazy. It is very, as I said before, it is very, very specifically divined. I might be able to get 1% more attack speed here. I should actually put the numbers in a POB to see if I could get to like a 1% more here. Divine this around a little bit, but it does have the perfect critical strike chance on the bottom one there. So I kind of want to leave it. So I bought this like, and this is kind of the thing about playing a boutique weird build that other people don't want. I think I bought this for like 5 exalts, right? For me, this is a triple stat Watcher's Eye, precision attack speed, critical strike chance, zealotry, and wrath critical strike chance. Like, this is bonkers good for my build, but no one else on the planet wants this thing. I think I bought it for like 5x. It's crazy. What a crazy world. And that's kind of a cool thing with playing something off meta and doing something really, really weird. Similarly, I bought this Lion's Pelt with Arc Chain on it for, I don't know, 20 chaos. So pretty cool, right? While I did funnel a bunch of currency into crafting the very, very specific gear that I was going for, that said, the bases and the stuff that I was going for, I got absolute dirt cheap. And much of the currency was going into me just trying to go for like the perfect, well-tuned things that I could go for. You could absolutely drop those numbers down, get started for less than this. I was playing this build without double elevated everything initially, and it was very, very comfortable in low red maps. But I wanted to really see how far I could push this. This is obviously like the very end game build of hundreds of exalts. And as I showed, like I've done Deathless Maven, I've done some hard invitations. I can farm Delirious Legions very, very comfortably. It does everything that I could ask for. Like a very comfortable, fun, fast mapper that honestly it's like moderately tanky. So what does kill me is I don't have perfect stun avoidance. That is the main goal that I want to get that higher. What I'm considering is perhaps buying Cobalt Jewels that maybe already have the stun avoidance and throwing them into Reforged crits and seeing if I can end up with good replacements for these jewels and get my stun avoidance up. That would be a cool way to do it. But, I have really, really good dodge. I have really good evade, actually. Like, that's crazy good evasion, right? Even with Wind Dancer up. And great resistances, 31 chaos res still. Pretty good avoidances and everything. And, fast as can be. Could not ask for anything more from this build. Oh, yeah, and then Flasks. So for Flasks, a Wise Oak, you want to get your cold and lightning res higher than your fire res, or if you can get them all exactly the same, then perfect. You want your cold and lightning res to be your highest ones, and you want to have them be exactly the same. That way the Wise Oak will benefit both of them for 8% penetration of both. Rip in peace, old Wise Oak. I'm using it Series Promise. This is probably not best in slot. It's an additional 8% damage as extra chaos. There's other stuff I could put in here. It's on the chopping block. But, being able to go to a nice 69 chaos res while it's up just gives us like additional bonus as we're going around. We're definitely over the leech cap, so we're not getting anything out of that. And then a little additional damage. Let's see, arc goes from 39k to 43k. That's fine. It's a nice boost of damage. The Diamond Flask is, it's fine. I have a chill avoidance Diamond Flask, nothing special. And in fact, like I am over crit cap the vast majority of the time. But the way that I like to put these builds together, cast and crit in general, is I want to be way over crit cap in general. So even when I have no buffs up, when I go into that first pack, I want to make sure that my first couple attacks are critting and I start attacking right away. Like I've played, perfectly tuned assassin cast and crit builds in the past, like perfectly tuned, where you only have your only crit capped when your power charges are up. You're even close to crit cap if your power charges are up. So like that first pack, like you go in that first pack, and if you're not critting right away, you could just die. Like if you don't have your power charges right away, right? That kind of feels bad. So I like to just like push my crit to a silly amount. That said, I could drop the Diamond Flask if I really wanted to. I could go for Quartz, get some additional dodge, something like that. These are very, very flexible. Bottled Faith is, it's just too good, right? 40% increased damage. Enemies take 10% increased damage, and then critical strike chance gets absolutely bonkers. Since I also have Zealotry is creating Consecrated Ground, and I get critical strike chance against monsters on Consecrated Ground while affected by Zealotry here as well. When you're making Consecrated Ground that big, It's just making my critical strike chance go crazy, and it makes things more comfortable. And the 10% increased damage taken and 40% increased damage, it's just too good. It is still best in slot, and there is a reason why it costs 20 exalts still. Also, those drop rates are crazy, man. I've only had one Bottled Faith, so I farmed this up myself. I only got it in doing 5.5 feared. Like, so that is 11 drops, 11 attempts for Bottled Faith drops to finally get one. And I've done 2 or 3 feared since then, and I still haven't seen another one. So this whole league, it's there's a reason why it's 20x. And then last of all, I have a traditional Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. Nothing special, just a regular zoom, go as quick as I can. You know, I could do something with like an Enkindling Orb or whatever, like juice it up or whatever, but I really don't like not getting flask charges while it's active. So I'm just happy with it like it is. I go fast enough, right? Like, I'm already running through all the packs and just killing things. Like, I can just tap Cyclone, I kill everything on the screen, and I continue on my way. And I get my flask charges, and I just keep it up all the time. So that works for me. Hey, so thank you so much for watching until now. You clearly enjoyed or liked something about what I did here. So if you did like it, I would very much appreciate a subscription, and I am very happy that you have made it this far. I understand that this is pretty intense, and I just really wanted to share my past 3 weeks of like what my passion has been, like putting a build together and seeing what can be done in the game. And I hope that I've inspired you to maybe try some things, and maybe even taking a build that you're already playing and maybe try something really weird. Even just swap out an aura to, or like a set of gear that, you know, maybe you think you can improve it over what you saw in a build guide. So, and if you did that, definitely let me know. I'm really interested in you know, hearing more ideas and what's out there. And in fact, if you tune into the Twitch stream, I am doing something really, really weird right now with Storm Rain and an Occultist. If you're interested in that, definitely tune into twitch.tv/subtractem. Anyway, that's enough shilling for myself. Anyway, thank you so much for watching until now, and I'll see you next time. Thank you and goodbye. I would like to give a special shout out to my patrons: Tricky Nick, Michael Johnson, Rickus B, Sailkite, Amarius, Bifrost50, Mark Hahn, Rentner, The Wrong Thing, William Lee, Aaron White, Colin, Day-R, Exferdidius, Gazer1990, Michael Rack, Mr. Doubleina, Nikolai Sachin S, Sixlink Andrew, and Whoop. If you'd like to get your name in the credits of my videos and some other cool things, head over to patreon.com/subtractem. Thank you.